Located in Georgetown, Texas, this 28 by 50 metal building with the lean-to.
Let's check it out.
Welcome back. This is Adbeel and Jared here from WolfSteel Buildings. And we're out here in Georgetown, Texas, a little bit north. Is it north or?
A little bit north of Austin.
We're like in deer country because as we were pulling up here, we had a lot of deer just hanging out here.
I think the proper word is fawn.
Yeah, fawn country. But hey, a beautiful building as well in this country. Man, I love it. And you don't want to miss out because this one is going to be really tall. There's a special type of legs that we do that I want to show off. What else are you excited about this?
Kind of showing off how the customer was able to fit, such a big building in a pretty condensed space.
That's something to check out. As well, it's got a lean-to. It's also got this unique color combination that I don't think we've had, and I haven't seen it common, so I think you guys will love it. Other than that, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on all our social media channels, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook to get some of the live action that's going on. Let's get this rolling. Alrighty, Pat. Jared, let's kick it off with the usual. What is the dimensions we are looking at here?
So here on the front side, it's a 28 wide building, 35 feet long, and 15 foot to the eave. It's like 18 something, 18.6 in the middle.
That's really tall.
It's a pretty tall building. I mean, when you're driving up, it's pretty eye-catching.
Honestly, it is pretty eye-catching. It's just a monument right here. Now, Jared, such a high building, and this is one of our tubular models, okay? So this is on the tubular side, galvanized frame, and it's 15 foot tall. We needed equipment to also navigate the installation of this, did we?
Yes, it was a pretty condensed space, but we also had to find a way to get the building up because it's so tall. Also the leg design and the truss design didn't really help, obviously, because it's so tall, we had to make it a little different. And we'll get into that here in a bit, but we did need a sky track to lift it up, and it was a little hard because it was very limited space, at least around the exterior. So a lot of it was just kind of using it here in the front to stand everything up.
We did a little damage there. We're still coming back on the concrete, but hey, that's part of the process. There's always something that can happen during the process. But overall, it turned out amazing. Our client's extremely happy, which I'm really happy with what I'm looking at. So this is again 28 wide, so it's a little bit shorter than a 30. And then we got the lean-to, which is
10 by 20. It connects to the main building at 13 feet. And it drops down to 11, 2 foot drop.
So for lean-tos, the minimum pitch that we want is a minimum of 212.
Yeah, we aim for 212. Sometimes it's like 1.8, 1.7, 1.9, which, that's technicalities, right? But 212 is kind of what we aim for.
And the main reason is because here in Texas, it rains, and it doesn't rain like this. It rains like this. And so we found that 212 is a minimum for a lean-to. That way you don't have water coming back up. So although we do put the foam enclosures, the ridge enclosures, but water will find its way.
I mean, the foam enclosures help, but it's the flashing.
Oh yeah, the
properly flashing
over.
Everything is where it really helps. But the way that lean-to flashing works, if you don't properly seal it up, it can find its way in.
You just gotta watch out for it. But hey, we take care of that. So when we're doing all the processing, shout out to our processing team, we're going through a construction review process where we check certain things to make sure that we come back to the job and say, oh man, or this or that. We got a system in place, and those checks and balances is what happens. So this is Quaker Gray and Pebble Beach.
It's all Quaker Gray trim. The downspouts are Quaker Gray. So that's a story within itself. I don't know if you can really tell here in the shot, but sometimes accessories like downspouts and gutters and like overhead doors, they're not really gonna always match your sheet metal color, which is your trim and obviously your panels. Like in this case, the Quaker Gray actually matches pretty good, but we have had instances like if you're getting an earth brown, there's so many different types of browns, and since the sheet metal comes from one coil, a variation in the next coil, it's not always gonna be exactly perfect. Sometimes it's a little bit more off. That kind of happened here with these doors where it doesn't really match exactly.
Yeah, so the sheet panel color is pebble beige. The doors, I believe what's on our catalog, but I believe it's sandstone is the color they use. It's not gonna match, and that's just the case. Now, if you're watching our channel, I know we have a project that, you know, our client got the doors painted. You can paint them later to match a color. Like you just basically get a sample, you go to Sherwin-Williams or any paint store, and then you can get the exact same color and get it painted. So I know we specifically did it for one client. We also did their door. So specific scenarios, we can do it. Specific scenarios, we might not be able to, but you know, ask us and we'll see what we can do.
That's really only just on the tubular, because on red iron, well, actually the gutter system all comes from the same coil. The gutters and downspouts are almost an exact match.
Yeah, that's specifically for our red iron. For our tubular, you know, we do try to match as close as possible. And as you can see here, it actually matches pretty close. They're not exactly the same, but I think it looks phenomenal. So again, we got that Quaker gray trims all the way around, as well as around the doors, and then the ivory, and these are insulated short panel residential doors. So man, you can feel like how sturdy they are because they are insulated. This probably are 10. You can feel they're a lot more sturdier than the ones that don't have insulation. Man, let's keep walking here. So again, this is actually our 26 gauge panel upgrade on everything.
Yeah, so the customer actually opted in for the 26 gauge, but stayed with the ag panel, right? It's 26 gauge ag panel. You know, next up coming for him is going to be spray foam. So it's, you know, he's pretty excited for that, but it is all 26 gauge sheet metal and trim.
The standard is 29 gauge. That's what usually comes standard with what you're being offered in the tubular industry or in the tubular. We offer 29 gauge standard, but our client here wanted 26 gauge. He wanted a lot more heavier material, and that's what we gave him here. Now this is a unique lean-to because it has 10 by 20. It's not the full length, and that's possible?
Yeah, it's possible. So with the tubular, the way we need to kind of design it is usually it's increments of whatever the truss spacing is on the inside of the building. So let's say on the inside it's every 5 feet. You know, your lean-to has to either be, you know, 20, 25, 30. Let's say the inside of the main building is 4 feet on center. So then you're talking, you know, 20, 24, 28, 32. So, you know, we just kind of have to adjust to it. But in this case, it was a 25.
Now, what if the client says, okay, well, this is 35 and this 5 foot on centers. I only want 23 feet. That's what I can fit. Is that possible?
It is possible. The way we would design it is we would keep the trusses at 5 foot centers because it's just going to be a little bit more cost efficient to do. Let's say I put a interior truss on the main building. That way the lean-to can connect directly. So it would be like trusses every 5 feet, and then I just put one. That's going to be kind of breaking the 5 foot pattern at 23 feet. That way the lean-to can connect.
Just to clarify, we would have to add another truss, an extra cost for adding another truss, and that's because we got to line it. And what we do is that we actually don't just connect it with any bolts, we actually weld and insert to connect the truss to the main structure. So it's welded inserts that we actually do from our fab shop out in Weatherford. Now, Jared, so we got openings here. Why would we recommend openings like these?
It just kind of depends. I mean, in this case, the reason for the openings was to eliminate these middle posts in between here. So kind of like how I was saying, they're every 5 feet, 4 feet. You know, not a lot of people like that. So some people will get either a header, or I think we have some YouTube videos on the channel where some customers will opt in for like cedar posts.
Cedar posts we can actually do. So we can do cedar posts like right here to support. I know here we have 1 foot. We highly recommend that we at least have 1 foot just because of more stability. I know our audience will ask, can we minimize this? Is that possible?
I've seen engineers spec to 6 inches, or even sometimes they'll spec it like right up against each other. But when it's not engineered, we try to shoot just for 1 foot. When it's engineered, whatever the engineer says is kind of what we gotta follow.
They do recommend to keep it at 1 foot. Again, the wider your stance, the more, you know, resistance you have from lateral forces or lateral pressure. So, and we're going to talk about that, especially when it comes down to our columns and how we do our columns for 13, 14 foot legs, 15 foot legs. Here we got 15. Now, it's actually a nice, good space. He does have, you know, an opening. He can access here. No concerns. Ready to go in here.
No.
What's up?
It has no spray foam insulation, so inside, it doesn't feel too great, so I'm going to open up some doors.
In the meantime, while he goes and open up the doors, I'm going to show off this door. Okay, so this is our steel door. This one's actually 48 inch. Okay, so we offer the 36 inch, which is about 3 feet, and this is the 48 inch, which is about, the 4 feet. The height is still 84, insulated at its core. And you can feel like it's so sealed. So it's insulated inside, and then obviously then the steel. So these doors I recommend, especially like compared to the mobile home door, which is the standard door. And I recommend it more, again, if you're gonna insulate your building, you want an insulated door. You want it really sealed. Another thing is these are a lot more harder to break in. So like for security reasons, these are a little bit more sturdier for any type of break-in situation. So now another thing I wanted to mention about the steel door compared to a mobile home door, that typically mobile home doors, they're very, very common in the industry, and they can cost around $300 or $400 compared to this one, which can cost almost like $1,500. Don't quote me specifically, but you can see the difference, which is around 3 to 4 times that price. Well, the mobile home door also is installed on top of the base rail of the frame. So basically the same frame you're seeing for all our tubular is installed over it. Here it's set right on the concrete. It has its own jams around that is a lot more sturdier. One of the problems I've had with mobile home doors, especially when you're gonna spray foam, is that they tend to move from the pressure of spray foam.
Yeah, it's an aluminum frame, so when you're spray foaming it and that spray foam starts to expand, we don't really show off too many mobile home doors on the channel. I think maybe like 1 or 2. But for the most part, I think last year we had like 3 or 4 mobile home doors, and 2 of them actually had us go back out, and they paid for us to switch it to a steel door.
Steel door. Yeah, and then I know like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I mean, that's when we put the policy of like, hey, if you're gonna do spray foam, we can't install you a mobile home door because I know you're gonna have problems. And that's just because of that. I mean, this is a lot more sturdier frame, and definitely you won't have those problems. Especially here, our client's saying, hey, I'm going to be doing insulation. So now he's actually ready for it. There's no modifications needed. There's nothing to be worried about. And so that's what, we're actually gonna talk about is some questions that he asked us about spray foam. You ready, Jared?
Well, yeah. I'll take it on. It actually, now with the doors open, it actually feels a lot better. We were talking to the customer earlier, and he was like, hey, let's go outside and catch a breeze.
Yeah, so outside is what, like 80 degrees, maybe 75 degrees. And it's a little bit muggy because it's been raining earlier or previous day. So it's a little bit muggy, but here now with the doors open, now you got some airflow.
Yeah, it feels really nice now.
Now, one of the things that I do recommend, especially if you're not going to insulate your building, is to have a door on one side and have a door on the other side. That way you can open up your doors and you got flow, airflow directly, okay? I've been in metal buildings where you don't really have a lot of airflow, but if you have the opportunity to have a door in the back and your space allows it, I've been in buildings where that flow, and especially when you're planning, where's that wind coming from? And when you know that and having the ability to just open up a door, opening up your windows, that also helps for airflow and making it comfortable inside a building.
Oh, it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference.
Okay, so let's talk about these columns, okay? So this is 15-foot legs. Jared, talk to me. We do ladder leg style.
Yeah, so it depends. We do ladder leg style, but it also depends on the building makeup. So when you're talking like a 12-foot tall building, you're talking single leg on the sidewalls and even single leg on the end walls. When you're talking 13 or 14-foot eaves, now you're getting a little taller, right? So now it's a little bit more, how could I say, susceptible to winds, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
High winds kind of push the building around a little bit more. So what we do now is we go up to double leg. So you can kind of see it right here.
You see it here.
If this building was 13 or 14 foot tall, you would have this type of leg system on your sidewalls, right? This was kind of that break where it's like, hey, when you go from 14 to 15, it's a double leg with spacer, right? So it's 2 bars, and then we just add a 6-inch spacer every 18 inches. And it's kind of like how you said, single leg is like you're standing on one leg and it's kind of tilting you over. You stand on 2 legs, you got a little bit more support. Well, when you go up to 15, we add that spacer in, and it just spaces out your legs and, it gives you a little bit more resistance.
Yeah, so that width is basically increasing. So now we got about, 7 inches?
7 3/4.
That it goes in. 6. And again, the reason why I'm mentioning is because I know that some of our competitors do different. So for 13 and 14 foot legs, sometimes they do build single leg, and then some of them do double too. So take a look into those, because to us, we've had the experiences where, man, you got these buildings moving too much than what is allowed on 13 and 14. And definitely for 15, I've seen double leg when we do this type of leg style. So this is what's gotten us great results. We're just saying that's how we build. And even on the end walls for 13 and 14, we do double. And on the end wall here, since this is not a load bearing wall, we still do double though, because again, if not, then you're gonna have like rattling coming in on the end walls. Double anchor, and then anchor on all the columns. Almost 3 anchors per column is what we've been doing on all our columns. So this is beautiful. I love this type of framing. Alrighty, Pac. So you got a little bit of insight of our framing, which I love here. Like, I love this type of framing. The galvanized makes the building look a lot like brighter because it's a light color. So now our client's looking to do spray foam, and he said, hey, I got some questions for you that I would like for you to answer. And I'm actually gonna ask Jared some of these questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
Explain the prep before spraying. So how empty do I need to have the building? That was his question. And the reason he asked is because he already brought in all his stuff in here to be able to get it out of storage. Okay, so, but he has it here now and he wants to spray foam this building. Jared, is that gonna be a challenge?
Yeah, so pretty much with the building this tall, I mean, the way you would do it is all the walk-in doors, the windows, the overhead doors, even the floor gets all plasticed off. So with all this stuff here, it really makes it challenging to plastic everything off, at least the floor wise. I know some customers kind of put it in the center, and that's fine, but it depends on how much, because if you have everything kind of piled up and there's a huge circle of things, the way a building this tall is you got to get your scaffolding moved around. And let's say there's something from there and I got a scaffold here as close as I can get it. I can't reach over and spray the gun, from here to the center there. So those are little things that, kind of affect, and we have to keep in mind. I mean, it does make it challenging to
Makes it a challenge. So one of the recommendations we let our client know is we probably have to really plan this out, because it's so tall. We might do scaffold, we might do scissor lift, or move stuff around in a way where it does give us the best, but it could affect the quality. Because again, when you're spraying, you want to spray it in a certain manner. Having obstacles in place can affect that. Another question is, what is the coverage? Is it going to be all 1 inch? Is it going to be, I know he's interested in 1 inch and 2 inch, but is it usually 1 inch or 2 inch? How does that really work?
For the most part, most customers do 1 inch. We always ask based off their needs. So, we're talking to the customer, he's like, well, I'm gonna do a wood stove and an HVAC. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, you might wanna consider 2 inches on the roof. And then even then he was like, man, I might just do 2 inches all around. It all just depends on your needs. If you're just trying to have, good control, you're kind of gonna be in and out, not really too worried about it, then I would say 1 inch works well.
Yeah.
If you're adding an HVAC system and a wood stove, I would do 2 inches on the roof, 1 inch on the sides. But if you really wanna get everything just fully controlled, you're gonna be in here day and night. We had one customer where he was like, man, I live in here and I just go to my house to go to the restroom and and shower. Then maybe 2 inches, the option for you. But I guess the answer to that is, I'm gonna answer your question with the question, what are you using the building for?
Another thing to keep in mind is if you're gonna frame the inside, because spray foam versus fiberglass, you can compare that cost. If you're gonna frame in the inside and then put drywall, then you could fill in the crevices with another type of insulation, which is like fiberglass, and use a combination depending the cost. That's really how most barn dominiums are done, really, where they spray the metal or they spray the zip system or OSB that's at the wall with a closed cell spray foam, really seal it, and then they fill in where they have their studs and their walls with fiberglass or rock wool or whatever you're using. It all matters. And then again, for homes, I mean, the R value for roofs, you got to be in the 30s, and then the walls 14. So 1 inch is R value 7, and then 2 inches is R value 14. It depends what you're using it for. Great answer. And last question is, how much will it cost? I know we don't have our calculator here. Jared, explain the calculation and how much would the spray foam for this project here, 28 by 35, 15 foot tall, be? Now, how does it get calculated? Because it's not by square footage on the ground.
It's not by square footage for sure, because That doesn't factor in how tall it is. It doesn't factor in roof pitches. The way it's calculated is by surface area. And calculating surface area, you have to factor in obviously length and width. But from there, it's eave height. What your roof pitch is. If this had a 612, you'd be talking a lot more surface area here on your end walls. And then same thing with your roof. The way the roof is calculated is, they always said, hey, you're never going to use the hypotenuse or the Pythagorean theorem in real world applications, but we actually do. So you find the hypotenuse of the roof, at least on one side, and then times the length, and that's how much
we're going to be using.
Yeah, surface area you're going to be covering. And then you just multiply that by your depth, so 1 inch, 2 inch.
And the cost for that. Now, ready to go outside? I want to share with you guys something else. Alrighty, Pack. In the beginning, we also mentioned about how there's not like a lot of space here, and it was really hard to kind of maneuver with equipment. So those are things that we have to plan, that we do the planning, but also when you're planning, it's like, okay, how is 3 feet away? How far do we have to be away from?
I prefer not to answer. No, it just depends. Like in this case, there was no like panels on this side. Mm-hmm. But, if there was panels, then how would you get in there with the panels and screw in? You're talking like 3 to 4 feet.
Minimum around. That's to consider, like if you have your fence really close, consider how do we bolt the panels, So that's why we do need about 3 to 4 feet. But here we still had enough room. But another thing to consider is like in a neighborhood like this, you might have HOA restrictions, you might have permitting restrictions. Check those out before you even look into a metal building. Because a lot of times maybe your HOA doesn't even allow a metal building, and then you don't want to waste your time, you know what I mean? So that's something to also consider when it comes down to like permitting and HOA restrictions. Sometimes, we've had clients that certain heights, you can't have certain heights, you got to bring it down. But here, I can't remember, I haven't looked into it, but I'm not sure. I don't think we had permits in a specific area here.
We didn't have any permits or even HOA requirements, but that was a great point, and I do want to touch on that. There's not a lot of tubular companies that look into permits or look into HOA restrictions. So I'm not saying we're the only ones. There's so many companies out there that I'm sure are doing that process for their customers. But it is something you want to look into before even placing any down payments with really anyone. The first thing you should do when you're looking into buying a metal building is obviously like, hey, what can I do at my property? Mm-hmm. And we look into that for our customers, obviously, before they, do any purchases, because we also want to know, what we're getting into. We don't want to, start doing all this planning and processing, and then it's like,
inspector shows up.
Yeah, he's like, hey, this is wrong, or hey, no permit for y'all, and we've already, invested so much time. So we actually try to look into it way ahead of time, even before the sale goes through. But been in some group chats or have seen some storage where it's like, man, I placed a down payment, and then I try to go pull my permit, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's important to be prepared. I know that for us, we look into the permits. So we look into it before you place a down payment. We know, hey, these are the things that they're requiring. And now at that point, we allow the client, hey, we can pull the permit, or you can pull the permit. Okay. Or you can sign a non-permit waiver where we don't pull a permit overall, but we still look into it and we still let you know, so that way you're aware and you make the decision. Because certain areas is like, nah, we have to. And so long in the business, we've had inspectors show up and be like, hey, take that building down. It can happen. I've had scenarios where clients like, well, I don't care, So, but those are scenarios that permitting can create, okay? And it's important for you to be aware before you even start the process of a metal building.
Yeah, it's like you said, fees. You get red tagged for a building that was never supposed to go up, and fees start piling up until you take it down, and even then you still have to pay the fee.
Yeah, and so that's the reason why we're emphasizing, because we've actually been going through a lot of like clients with permits, and there's a lot of extra fees, there's a lot of unknowns. Also, we get ahead on the whole process, and then all of a sudden, hey, you must have brick. Hey, you must have certain things. If the client would have known since the beginning, we wouldn't have to redo the whole strategy of planning. I know a lot of our sales team is going through that, where, they're working a design and it's beautiful, and then all of a sudden you look into the permits and it's like, dang, it needs to be 18 foot tall max. You can't have certain square footage, or hey, you can't even do a metal building in this property. It has to match exactly your house materials. That's the reason why we're emphasizing on the permitting, because it's actually been pretty common, and the best recommendation is do your research before. Especially, I know a lot of people on YouTube are watching and they're planning. They're thinking, okay, this is how I want it. Well, the very first step is permitting.
Well, yeah, and that's
and HOA requirements.
You know, and that's if you're lucky, if you live in a good city that has their rules and everything on their website up to date. Some cities are just a nightmare to work with, but you know, it's also because usually the building departments, with how fast Texas is growing, are just getting flooded. So
yeah, I know there's one that we went to last week. We showed up at the permit department and lady was like, well, I'm processing developments, commercial, residential, and your small little accessory building. I'm like, wow, okay, that's crazy. You know, they're just going through a lot. There's a lot of growth, and that's the reasons why. But hey, they're doing the best they can, and so the best thing we can do is be prepared. Alrighty, Pat, I hope that this video gave you guys a lot of information. I know we spoke about spray foam, permits, this beautiful building that we have here in Georgetown, Texas. And I'm excited to see how the spray foam, we're gonna finish it off for him.
Yeah.
Do you have any final comments, Jared?
No, I'm excited too, you know, just to kind of see how it comes out. It's been a great customer to work with.
No, that's for sure. Other than that, guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next video.